and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and next we have our land acknowledgement. As we gather for this meeting, let us take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place, and in doing so, recognize the various traditional lands on which we do our business today. We wish to acknowledge this land on which this SPC meeting is taking place. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Hohokam, the Acamel Ooram, and most recently, the Salt River Pima Indian community. Today, this meeting place is still home to many indigenous people from across Maricopa, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. Okay, today's meeting, and we'll get it on this screen eventually. We're going to start off like we normally do. You can ask questions to Dr. Menzel, who's standing over here with his own microphone. And then the topic that our panel is going to talk about is what to do if your child is experiencing bullying. And I'll introduce all the panel members later in a few minutes. And then we'll end the meeting with executive board updates and any updates from school reps. Okay, so if you have a question for Dr. Menzel, if you can write it on an index card and bring it up if you already haven't. What is the status of the lawsuit against the county over the property tax refunds? And can parents donate their refunds back to SUSD?
So I'll answer the second question first. Absolutely. This is the time of year where people are able to make gifts and get some tax benefit from it. So you can do it to your school or to a program, and that's fine. Status of the lawsuit. Nick is here. We're working with counsel to file notice of claim. We have not done so yet, but we are working with the same law firm that filed the notice of claim for Maricopa Community College District. I don't know, I expect within the month, but certainly before the end of the year, we should be able to get the notice of claim filed.
Yes, sir. Okay, there are individuals and groups of individuals who use the disciplinary system against other students. What is being done about this from the school district side, and what can parents do about this?
So can you read that again? This sounds like a trick question.
There are individuals and groups of individuals who use the disciplinary system against other students. What is being done about this from the school district side, and what can parents do?
So what we would need to know is a case-specific example of how someone's using the disciplinary code to maybe target someone else. And that would be a conversation with the building administrator, whether it's an assistant principal or principal, to identify, one, is it a pattern of behavior? So the code of conduct, there's an expectation for behavior. If someone is manipulating that to target a different student, that concern should be brought to the attention of the building administrator so they can look into that.
What's the best way to do that? Because I'm guessing some of that would be protected information.
So without knowing more specifics, I'm just trying to envision how someone might be using the discipline code. So you're going to be talking about bullying, for example. There's policy and I believe language in the code of conduct that talks about a false report as well, right? So if you falsely accuse someone of doing something in order to get them in trouble, if we discover that that's an issue. I think anytime a parent has a concern, they think it doesn't smell right, they need to bring it to the attention of the administrator and say, I have this concern. Our job then is, as leaders in the system, both at the district level and the building level, is to do the fact finding to identify what's happening here. And you may or may not realize this, but not every person tells the whole truth. So when something happens and they come in and they're telling their side of the story, it may be their perspective, it may be accurate, but also might be partial information. Part of our job is to make sure we get the full story so that we can paint a complete picture of what happened and how it happened. And my analogy will be a football one. It's the person who does the retaliatory shove or punch that gets the flag. Oftentimes the officials don't see the first thing. So part of our job is to make sure that we're doing a thorough review and investigation. Again, I think differently about discipline is an opportunity to learn. Punishment is a different conversation. And so in this environment, if someone is misusing a reporting feature, we would need to have that flagged so that we could review whether or not that's happening.
Okay, my students complain about locked bathrooms on campus. Are there alternative strategies in the works to combat vandalism and vaping besides denying access?
So we have this conversation with the Student Advisory Board every month. We'll have it again this afternoon at 3 o'clock. The locked bathrooms are an ongoing concern. We try to work with our students to say, look, if we want access so that people can use the facilities appropriately. But when people destroy and vandalize the bathroom, so really that's the biggest issue and challenge. And we've actually sent bills to parents when kids have destroyed school property. It's an ongoing effort to ensure that we have access, but that we don't continue to see this repeated pattern of behavior. So appreciate the question. We want our bathrooms to be unlocked. We also want them to be clean, safe, and free from the incidents that we've had that resulted in them being locked. And I don't know that they're locked all day long. There are certain times of day depending on where we can have supervision.
What is the expo and who should attend?
Everybody should attend the expo. It's tomorrow night from 5 to 8 at Coronado High School. There are flyers over here. The expo is an opportunity for any parent or prospective parent to learn more about the educational offerings in Scottsdale Unified School District. All 29 of our buildings and Scottsdale Online will have booths and be able to talk about programs. We'll also have presentations throughout the night where you can learn more about the dual language immersion options at Desert Canyon Elementary School, at Pueblo Elementary, that pathway then through the middle school and high school for DLI. You can learn more about the Math Science Academy, STEM and STEAM programming, lots of really cool things. And for parents who maybe have their student in an elementary school but want to think about what the other options are, spend time talking to middle school and high school parents. This is an opportunity to see the full array of educational options in Scottsdale Unified School District. And it's available even to grandparents who are interested in learning more about what's happening here in our district. So even if you don't have kids, it's an opportunity to learn, and we want to pack Coronado High School tomorrow night.
All right, does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you for being here today. It's gonna be a great presentation and panel discussion.
Okay, so the topic of today's meeting is we're going to have a panel discussion on what to do if your child is bullied. So our panel is Matt Linz with Support Services. We're going a little bit out of order on the slide. This is Nicholas Buzon, General Counsel. Dr. Junior Michael is Ingleside's principal. Dr. Flores is a school psychologist at Mojave. Here, I'm going to let you say it because I forgot the pronunciation.
I'm Lauren Loyacano. I'm the social worker at Desert Canyon Elementary School.
Okay. And so how we've structured this is we have a list of questions that I'm going to ask and topics we're going to go through. We're also going to take a website tour of some of the resources that are available through the district. And at the end, we will open it up for questions from you. And I'll remind you of this in the end as well when we get to it. This meeting is being recorded, so it's live streamed on YouTube and it's being recorded. So for you guys, what that means is we all have to talk into the microphone or nobody can hear in the recording. So I will let you guys pass it around and also run when someone starts talking without a microphone. But I also want to remind all of you, when you ask a question, you need to keep any personal identifying information out of that question and ask in general terms. If you want to ask more specifically, then you can do it privately when it's not being recorded on YouTube. Okay. So I'll wait and see who wants to answer this first. All right. So we have, so we're going to start with when bullying has occurred. So the first question is, what are the steps a parent should follow if their child is being bullied?
Well, good morning, everybody. If you involve me, General Counsel, it's probably already too late, and I'm not going to be able to, and I'm going to say you need to call the principal and site staff, and I'm not going to know anything about it. So that's why I decided to grab the microphone from this one. You really need to start at the site level with your teacher, classroom teacher, and then the principal.
I think one of the major facets here is to truly understand the word bullying and what that entails. Oftentimes, when support services called in to look at a situation of bullying or possibly provide prevention materials, we start off with really educating the entire community as to what bullying is. We do have a presentation that we hope to show later on today that involves a framework that we commonly use called stop, walk, and talk. And so when there has been an incident of bullying, or when campuses look at building some prevention, what we call Tier 1, which is for all students, we look at first everyone understanding that word bullying. Because it's different than harassment or a one-time, aggressive act. Those things are more a one-time situation. And oftentimes when a student is part of a situation that involves negative language or aggressive act, we rush to maybe term that bullying. In order to be bullying, and we'll see this in the presentation in a bit, there's a couple things that really need to be in place in order for it to fit that definition of bullying. One of which is the intent to harm. And so usually we say, hey, there was an intent to harm here. But then the other two things, one of which is a power imbalance. And that could be a physical power imbalance. That could be a social power imbalance. It's just an imbalance of power. Maybe there's a friend group and they're starting to exclude somebody. But there is that imbalance of power. And then the third thing is that it's repetitive. It's not a one-time incident, but it is a repetitive type of situation. With that being said, the first thing, and I have children, I have a middle school daughter, I have twin elementary boys. When they come home and we have conversations about things that are happening at school, some of those situations where there's adversity between peers, the first thing that I will guide them to say is, did you tell them to stop? The stop, walk, talk, first thing you need to do is you need to articulate and kind of let the other person know, hey, I don't like what we're doing here. I don't like what's going on. That is the first step. Oftentimes when we're called in for bullying situations, you might have 2 friends or 3 friends, a friend group, where they're starting to do some things that the other people don't enjoy. And there might be an apprehension for one of those friends to tell their other friends, hey, stop, I don't like it. The first thing really in terms of coaching parents as to, hey, what can we do if a student comes home, if your kid comes home and says something has happened, the coaching really should be, first off, you need to tell that person, stop, I don't like what you're doing. And so I would say that is the first place to start, is letting your student know, to communicate to the person who's doing this harmful act, hey, you need to stop, what's going on here. Once they tell them to stop, if it continues, then to coach them, hey, find somebody else. And this is a tricky part, especially if it involves a friend group, is maybe this friend group, let's try to come together, let's figure out what's happening in this friend group. Is this something that we can work through in this friend group? Or, hey, do we need to walk? Is there, maybe this is happening on a basketball court, is there another basketball court you can play on? Is there somewhere else that you can go to enjoy your recess or enjoy the situation? Is there another bus seat that you can go to remove yourself from that situation? The next step is to walk. Now, if that adversity, if that situation is following you after you've removed yourself from that situation, you talk, you tell in a caring, loving adult on campus. With that, now you've kind of gone through the progression. You told the individual stop, you removed yourself from that situation, and it's still continuing. It's time to report that. And as a staff on campus, campus staff are trained, if somebody comes to you with a report, that there is a mandate that you report that and you notify it to your site administrator. So that would be the progression of events that I would say to parents to follow, that stop, walk, talk, just when coaching your student through situation that might be adverse.
I feel like you just answered all the questions that are going to be asked today. I guess the only thing that I will add, and Mr. Lenz, thank you for saying this, the education piece has been really important in the school level. Education as far as, parents learning the definition of bullying, right? And then also helping students understand what bullying is. And then once that's done, then I think we get proper reporting, and then we can quickly, react to those reports and take the steps. Because what I think I see at the school level often is something that is not yet bullying, and then we take, the steps to say, hey, knock it off. You said this or did this to so and so. They did not like it, and is that what you intended? More often than not, a kid will say, well, I thought we were playing. I thought we were friends, or whatever the case is. And so then once that conversation happens and it doesn't continue, it's very rare that then that student that I had a conversation with goes back to that student and continues to have that, negative interaction, power imbalance, whatever the case may be. And then the other scenario that I see is what looks to be bullying or repeated acts of meanness has been happening and then was not reported, and then we try to backtrack, and then now that's really hard, right? And so then it's hard to corroborate, did this really happen, did not happen? To the question that Dr. Menzel got about what sounded like maybe a family or an individual or a student using discipline to harm another student, I think where families will appreciate our approach is we really try to corroborate and try to have some kind of evidence to the best. We're not like trained investigators, but we do our best, is to try to have some kind of due process where we, take statements. What really helps? Videos. Videos are very good. I just dealt with a situation yesterday, and I was working with a parent. And what I've learned in my almost 20 years and 10 years of assistant principaling is that kids rarely tell the whole truth. They tell a version of the incident, sometimes to their benefit. Sometimes they leave out, maybe not intentionally, the part that makes them sound not good. The thing that never lies is the video. And so we had this situation with a student where one student was claiming another student had done this thing, and then our dean had done some interviews in the process, got some videos, which told another side of the story, right? And so anyway, to go back to that question, even though I wasn't asked, I think the thing that we often do is go through the due process and fact-finding to the best of our abilities and really try to have some concrete data before anybody is disciplined through the code of conduct.
I don't know if I should add or wait for your questions. Oh, no, go ahead. Okay. Hi, good morning. And so as a school psychologist, one of my big roles and responsibilities is being part of a team that really looks at how we create effective and positive and safe school learning environments. So exactly what Matt and what you were saying is, we don't wait for these things to happen. We are already thinking about how do we create proactive strategies? What skills do we need to teach our students? How do we train our staff to be looking out for some signs, and also then empowering our students to feel safe and comfortable in identifying an adult to talk to so that they don't have to wait till it gets out of hand. And so really looking at the Stop, Walk, Talk, which I'm also a big fan of and have been implementing in our school, is that it really focuses on teaching social responsibility. So it's not just identifying and teaching kids what kindness is and what respect is and how do you give kindness, how do you give respect, but also is that everybody deserves to be respected. And when you're not being respected or a peer is not being respected, really empowering them on what to say without engaging, so that we can interrupt the behavior. And I think the biggest thing I wanted to add in really understanding bullying is that what the research has showed is that what maintains that unkind and disrespectful behavior is peer attention. So typically when unkind behavior happens and peers either laugh because they don't know what to do, so they make it nervous and laugh about it, or they stand there, or they add to it. It really increases those behaviors, and it continues to happen. So it's really about empowering our students to understand that, so that when they see something that's being unkind or disrespectful, that one, they don't add to it, that they remove themselves, that they can interrupt it, but also focusing that if they need help to come to an adult. And one of the things that we've done in the schools is not just telling kids report it, because one, that could be very intimidating and they're afraid of retaliation, or they don't know who to report it to. So at the beginning of the year, we've had students complete a form. It's already like completed for them, but it has lines, like for example, if somebody's being unkind to you or somebody else, who are 3 friends you can count on to get support? Who are 2 adults at home that you can share this with? Who are 2 adults on campus? And then at the bottom of the sheet, it has the principal's name and email and phone number, the counselor's name and email. So they have that sheet on their binder. And at any time that they may have some difficulties for themselves or a peer, because we really focus on not being a bystander, but an upstander, like stand up for your friends, for yourself, and empowering, but also teaching all students. So we're also teaching students, what do you do when somebody tells you to stop, so that they know how to respond. That may mean that you said something that offended somebody or made them uncomfortable. So when somebody tells you to stop, you just stop, even if you disagree. So it's really empowering and creating those positive school environments, and really focusing on teaching them the behaviors we want to see, being kind, being respectful, and what that looks like, and then empowering kids to stand up for themselves, and really building trusting relationships with at least one adult that they can come to, so that they don't have to wait too long. Just wanted to add that.
Anyone else? Okay. So let's assume we've all, tried stop, talk, walk, and talk to people, but what options do parents have if they feel like the process isn't working for them? When can or should they change teachers, classrooms, or even schools?
Sir, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that is definitely something that you would want to communicate
pointing
with
the
your
finger at
site administrator. So we're very lucky to have a site administrator with us today to fully unpack that.
So that's why I was almost like a minute or 2 late. Just before I got here, we were meeting with a family counselor and teacher, and in this case, it wasn't necessarily bullying, but it was just another classroom issue that we were trying to address. The same playbook works for just about everything. So if you go to our campus and our counselor or teacher or somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, we got this thing going on. We've done this, and so I'm a broken record. I was a former math teacher, so most things come down to like some kind of formula that works, in my opinion, in most cases. And that is, I'll say, "Hey, have we met with the family yet? Have we all sat down and try to get on the same page about what's going on, and then to try to come up with some steps to address that situation inside the classroom, outside the classroom, wherever this is, after school, wherever it's happening, on social media, by the way, where a great deal of things happen that are not always positive." So first what we do is we'd sit down and we'd say, what's going on, who are the responsible parties, and then what's not going well, and what are the steps that we put in. But I think your question is asking, what if it does not work? Then what we always say in this morning's meeting, for example, is, hey, we're going to have this window of time. Here are the things we're trying. And then if that doesn't work, then, hey, we will do a teacher change or a classroom change. So we're not going to just be like, hey, we never do that. We try to respond to situations so that we get the best outcome. And sometimes that does require a classroom change or a setting change. Hopefully not a school change. Hopefully there's something that we can do. But there have been times, unfortunately, where a family feels like, hey, no matter what kind of change you make, my student still is going to have this kind of experience, which obviously we don't want.
Having currently been a parent who just moved their kid from one school to another, I know how hard it is to transition from one school to another or classroom to another. I mean, it is something that when your kids are young, it just, is mind-boggling to think you thought they were going to be in that school or that classroom for the whole year at least. And I think SUSD has great administrators. Every time I have a conversation with an administrator about, a situation with a parent, their heart's always in the right place. They want to assist the parent. They want to make sure the kid works. But sometimes that particular location for a student just isn't the right fit anymore, and they have to be moved to another classroom or potentially another school. And communications break down. People's hearts are really into it. They're their children they're talking about. So at that stage, one thing that's great about the administrators is they are not, they are humble enough to say, okay, well, maybe I should get my supervisor involved. And fortunately, we have an assistant superintendent of secondary instruction, Dr. Sackos here, who chances are the administrators have already sought counsel from their supervisors when it comes to placement. Sometimes if the kid has an IEP or a 504, then there are legal requirements that have to be followed, and then it rises to a different level sometimes. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if you do have a communication issue, a communication breakdown with something like that, don't be afraid to say, can we also talk to the assistant superintendent on it? Or, you can reach out to me, or Dr. Menzel even will always be helpful. Our goal is never to, look at one of the sites and find blame. It's to find a solution for that particular student, because the goal is to get those students from one level to the next successfully. And if it's not working, you start with the administration, but we will put our heads together to find a solution.
Okay. What rights do children who are being bullied have? What rights do their parents have? And then the flip side is, what happens when a child is determined to have bullied other children in school?
I think at some point it'd be very beneficial just to show the website, to show, right. So just the steps and the process. So let's say we have a situation at home. You have coached your student with the stop, walk, talk. You've seen that the three things are evident. There's a power imbalance. It's repetitive. There's an intent to harm. You've had those conversations with your student. They've come back. I told them to stop. I walked away. It continues to follow. At that point, that report, that bullying report, there is a formal process, and it is in board policy how we approach bullying at SUSD. And this is all found within our support services website. So when you go to SUSD, you head to departments. Within the departments tab, you can find the support service tab. And under the support service tab, there's a link to bullying. With bullying, there are additional resources. And so with that, on the right-hand side of the website, you can see a multitude of different items, documents listed here. One of those documents is going to be the reporting form. And so that is going to just be a form that you can complete, fill out, and return to your campus, to the administrators, whether that's through an email or that's brought to the office. This is really the form that initiates a bullying investigation.
How long has that form been available? And I'm speaking loud enough so all can hear me.
How long has the form been available?
So this is a form that predates my time. I've been in support services for 10 years, so this is part of board policy. We do have in every classroom some documentations, a poster, what to do in case of bullying. So that is part of board policy, that we have that available. That there's not a whole lot of things that are in every classroom. American flag, bullying documentation, Constitution. There's only a few things that we're mandated to post in every classroom, and the bullying poster is one of those. The form in terms of how to report, though, that is part of board policy. Once you go through that process, you bring it back, that initiates a investigation. And so all those steps in terms of that bullying investigation are part of that board policy, which I believe is also available on our website. So that board policy here just goes through student rights as we're going through those investigations. And it's laid out here in terms of the steps that campuses are to take and the things that are afforded to students that are going through those processes. This is when campuses contact support services as to, we have a bullying investigation that we're moving through. This is what we coach site administrators on. Hey, these are the steps, these are the timelines, this is what happens when we are moving through that investigation.
Well, I'll just say, and I'm trying to reach for examples without disclosing identities, obviously. Just to the parent in the back, with or without the form. So one of the most recent, I can think of two incidents, and our assistant principal and our dean do an amazing job, and they field a lot more of these than I do, but I do back up. So one came from a parent and said, hey, my kid is saying these things are being said to my kid in physical education. And so whether that parent fills out that form or not, every single thing that comes to our attention is looked into properly and is dealt with accordingly. And what I always tell students and families is we don't stray from the code of conduct. There's things within it where we try to use professional judgment, but the code of conduct drives all of our work, and that's what helps us be equitable. And I'm sure my boss appreciates it. Mr. Buzan appreciates it, so that things don't escalate to his level. But more than anything, it gets the results that we want to protect students so that students feel safe on campuses. But in that situation, basically, the parent brought it to my attention and said, hey, my kid doesn't even really know that I'm reaching out. And then usually what I do is I insist that either myself or somebody from our team meets with that student, and then we start to address it. And in this case, there was some repeated, like things like, hey, instead of calling the student by their wonderful name, they were using another inappropriate name. So, and had been said repeatedly. So then I asked when I did meet with the student, and I said, hey, have you told the student that you don't like that? And he said, well, I haven't. And that student said, before you talk to the student, can I have an opportunity to address them? I said, yeah, that'd be awesome. And that student tried to do that. And then unfortunately, the other student did not receive it well. And then that's when I got involved, and then we took some steps. And since then, nothing has come up. But if it does come up, now we have to reach, like I said, into the code of conduct and take the next steps.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to, I really did not expect to speak this much, but the questions about student rights, I just want to make sure everybody knows and agree with Matt completely that if you have a bullying complaint, fill out that complaint, the policy's there. The board policies are also on a different section of the website, but you can just Google Scottsdale Unified School District Board Policy and find the policy manual. And in one of those is policy JR and regulation JRR, which includes all the student rights. It's also in the student code of conduct. So, anytime there is a bullying investigation, Matt Lenz and his team, Shannon Cron, are very knowledgeable of these rights. They're not trying to investigate, your kid from my prior career to put paper on them necessarily and just get them in trouble or to, push them in a certain direction. They are conscious of the students' rights, both for the accused and the victim. And some of the rights that are listed, right to access records, right to assemble, right to be educated, right to due process. These are all rights that the staff are aware of and regularly value and give credence to, right?
Can I ask a quick question? Can I ask a question, even though I'm on the panel? And just so, and I think maybe parents will appreciate hearing this. Matt and Nick, is there a scenario where a parent fills out the bullying form but does not fit the definition that you provided as bullying, and maybe it's just one act? In that case, then this form will still be followed through, and the investigation will show that it wasn't necessarily bullying just yet, but then the parent gets a response back as part of the investigation. Can you speak to that?
So once, and it is a timely process in terms of the amount of oversight from the site administrator to go through the steps in an investigation. Oftentimes, once that document is filed and a thorough investigation takes place, there are required steps in terms of notification that action has been taken. Now, you might have case by case. You can imagine with a school district of 23,000 students, there's a lot of cases that might arise in terms of adverse situations on campus. It's just the nature of, where we're at and having interactions between, K through 12 students. Sometimes the term bullying might be used very lightly, and it's deemed right away, quickly, that it's not repetitive, that this was a one-off. That is a situation at which all parties would come together and say, hey, does it meet the criteria of bullying? Do we need to come together and go through the formal investigation for this? And if it is brought to all parties that, no, this indeed was not bullying at that time, there might be an alternative pathway other than going through the formal bullying investigation. If it is deemed, though, that is repetitive and there's a power imbalance and there is a student that is suffering after telling the parties to stop and they've removed them from the situation, we need to ensure safety and security of all students on campus. It's our number one priority as a school district, is to ensure that our students are coming to campus and feeling safe and are safe physically, socially, behaviorally. So we take these things very seriously, and if there is a situation in which bullying there is any concern that there is a situation of bullying happening, this process allows us to have that thorough investigation, and from those findings then put courses of action into practice that would ensure safety and security for all students on campus. So case by case. Most regularly, we're going to follow that process unless all members of that reporting party feel as though, hey, maybe this was called bullying and it was not, at which case we would utilize the code of conduct to approach that particular violation or incident in the way that's stipulated in the code of conduct.
And I just wanted to add, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me, regardless whether after the investigation it's considered bullying or just unkind and disrespectful behavior, we still, as school psychs counselors, we work with those students too, the students that maybe are being unkind or disrespectful, to try to identify what's going on with that student. Sometimes it's just a mistake. Sometimes the kids are trying to be funny because of the social media and they think it's funny and they don't see it as disrespectful or how it can make people uncomfortable. Well, what a great opportunity for us to teach and model and provide some supports and interventions. Sometimes we find that students that are being unkind or disrespectful, they lack some social skills, they lack some ways to problem solve, they don't have the right skills they need. What a great opportunity for us after they follow the process and they discipline, but then follow up and identify what's the skill the student needs to be successful in the future. One, it's gonna reduce the student being unkind to the same student or to other students, but also they're gonna earn and learn the skills they need to be successful, be a good friend, be kind, be respectful, learn how to problem solve. So there's follow-up. It's not just discipline, it's also follow-up with supports and interventions so that all students have the opportunity to be in school, be successful, and have good opportunities to make friends and have healthy relationships.
Yeah, it's a very collaborative process between admin, social work, psych. We all come together. So whether it's deemed bullying or not, we are all made aware of it. So then we can have that heightened awareness to be on the lookout for things too. You know, we're constantly walking campus, so we see things maybe, you know, that a teacher might not see because they're watching their whole class, where we can kind of watch more on an individual basis. And so then, you know, once we are aware of the situation, whether it is deemed bullying or maybe just a mean moment, we then can go in and do that teaching. And that might be a whole classroom lesson. You know, maybe the whole class is struggling to be kind to each other, or small groups, or on that individual front. But it can look very different for different students. But it kind of gives us just to have the lookout and be on our radar so that we can kind of see what's going on too. So we're looking more at that smaller group rather than the whole class. Okay. Oh.
Do we know on average how many bullying cases happen in Scottsdale Unified School District on a yearly basis? And how do we fare against other districts? I don't know if that's a little bit difficult, but I know you guys monitor how many cases come in. Do you know on average?
So I couldn't speak to certainty right offhand on that specific number, but that is something that could be made available in terms of cases that support services gets called out to, a handful, in terms of things that truly get into situations that need additional support. But in terms of just overall the number of violations from bullying, I couldn't speak to certainty, but it's not one of our top 5 at any level. And so other incidents happen more frequently than bullying.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about what the district and schools do on the proactive side. So what proactive actions does SUSD take against bullying? And maybe Dr. Michael, this is something we can talk about, like what is a No Place for Hate school and how did that, I know you implemented that program when my child was there, but right, and it's been a few years now, but that's a proactive thing. So anyway, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we are a No Place for Hate school, and there's several middle schools in our district who also are a No Place for Hate school. So huge credit to our assistant principal, Ms. Mastropola, who brought that to our campus, and that was in response to we started together 4 years ago, and you know, there's just an uptick of behaviors that revolved around saying, you know, and racially insensitive or things like that on campus. And so we do lessons, and now as part of advisory, we do a No Place for Hate lesson. It typically falls on Fridays, but just, you know, a huge focus on being respectful, inclusive, being kind, all the things that we want to see on campus. And it's a never-ending endeavor. Middle school students, our students are wonderful. I really do love our students. I always say we have the best students in the world, and I should, I'm biased. But they are middle school students, and they will say and do things that I think some of it is age appropriate, some of it is definitely very alarming. In their defense, I think the things that they have access to, and this little guy here, you know, I know when I went to school, there's things that I think were said when I was a middle schooler that was not good, but I feel like it's definitely gotten I don't know, I think it's gotten worse, and the access to you know, information and things on social media online have made that worse. So No Place for Hate has been instrumental for us. We do second step lessons also throughout the year. And one of the things earlier when I said educating parents and students that I found to be very valuable is we've had Katie McPherson come speak to our families a couple times. The first time it was really well attended, and it was before the school year started. And one of the things that Katie does that I find to be very valuable is she shares with families and students, you know, hey, what things should we try to encourage our students to address on their own, and what things need to be escalated. So basically, what Matt is talking about, the difference being the difference between a bullying situation where there's these repeated acts, and then, hey, somebody just not being nice that makes us feel uncomfortable, makes us feel bad, not pleasant at all, and how do we address that, right? But yeah, so a lot of proactive steps. We do school events. Yesterday, our assistant principal, Ms. Mastropolo, and the No Place for Hate committee. On Tuesdays, we all wear our No Place for Hate shirt. We try to make it school-wide, and I do think it's had an impact. But like I said, bullying's one of those things that is just an unbounded problem. And, you know, I think kids are, all of us, I believe in humanity. We're generally kind and you know, want to be happy, but you know, any one of our students could be experiencing something outside of school, and then how that manifests on campus, how they treat their peers, I think is some of the elements that we see that rise to the level of bullying, unkindness, and things like that. So I don't think our No Place for Hate lessons and the fact we're a No Place for Hate school can always impact that, and the factors change, and kids have different experiences that comes on campus and manifests in different ways. We try to address it, we try to be proactive, try to do multiple things at once, so it's a big challenge. We're trying our best.
So can you guys speak to other preventative measures that maybe aren't, like, because not every school is a No Place for Hate?
So I think it's a perfect question to just bring to light for the entire community the incredible efforts that are done from all of our campuses to utilize what's known as the MTSS for behavior framework. And so MTSS stands for multi-tiered systems of support. There's an academic component and there is a behavioral component. Each one of our campuses is part of our strategic plan, and so we action plan to fully initiate this framework on all of our campuses. So please know that on every one of your campuses, there's a team of educational professionals with behavioral expertise and an administrator on that team that routinely, monthly, look at discipline data. So great question about that bullying data, right? There's a team on every campus that looks at that discipline data monthly and uses a very set agenda to analyze that data, drill down that data, and determine what is the number one thing on campus that we're seeing violations for. So what is the negative behavior that we are seeing with greatest frequency or that causes the greatest concern for our community? Once that area is identified, the team of professionals looks at brainstorm ideas as to either reteach students, retrain the staff, recognize students who are doing the right thing, or possibly restructuring, whether that be, you know, setting up lines on which way to walk down the hallway, getting more supervisory staff on the playground, whatever it might be. But really brainstorm some different potential courses of action to address the number one area of need. From there, they action plan, they determine who's going to do what, and every month they do some sort of action plan to address the number one need on campus. That process is repeated every single month. When we do determine that rates of any incident go down, we celebrate and we get it out to the community that we have had tremendous gains reducing that number one targeted behavior. If the behavior continues, we come back to the drawing board and we action plan some new strategy. That prevention measure allows us to monthly continuously improve what we're doing here at Scottsdale based on what's evidenced in that discipline data. That's one thing that we do monthly. Right out of the gate, every student is taught our school-wide expectations, whether that's SOAR or PAWS or CRS squared. Every one of your campus has MTSS Tier 1 posters posted across the campus. That's in classrooms, that's in hallways, that's in the cafeteria. Students are taught those behavioral expectations. If we see, as evidenced in data, that there's an uptick in any one of those areas, students are taught those behavioral expectations. Going to do a quick plug for the Film Fest that's going to be coming up in February. We are going to celebrate some of those teaching tools, some of those videos that students bring to teach these expectations. Teams of students are brought in to create these videos to showcase what these school-wide expectations are and how we can showcase those in our classrooms, in our hallways, in our cafeterias. So lots of prevention just in terms of every campus doing that multi-tiered systems of support, and then our social workers and our psychologists on campus do a multitude of different things, all the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 levels, to ensure that any students that do need additional supports are receiving some supports, getting some of those social skills trainings with the social skills to be successful in academia.
Okay, so I want to ask a case study of something that was brought to our attention, and then I'd like to do the website tour and the PowerPoints up for you, and then we'll open it up to you guys. Okay, so this is like a real scenario that happened, but I've anonymized it. So the overarching question is, what can schools do when anti-bullying or even behavioral policies, right, even if it isn't repeated, goes against a family's political and or cultural beliefs? So the example is an upper elementary student or maybe a middle schooler is parroting what they're hearing at home about like a population like LGBTQ, and they're maybe freaking out their classmates. So how do you handle it when, kind of talk us through that. How do you handle it when kids are kind of bringing something like that from home that's maybe upsetting or harming other people?
I think in this situation, it's nice to lean on to some restorative practices. So one of the things that we often utilize as a tool are that restorative framework. Many of our social workers, most of our social workers have been trained in restorative practices. Our assistant principals just had a refresh training last month. The restorative practices approach really allows for us to discuss some of these situations with members of our community. We can have one-on-one conversations, we can have small group conversations, we can have whole class conversations. What it allows us to do, it's essentially effective statements. How does that make you feel? How does it affect you when something like this occurs? We might have a impromptu conference with some members of that classroom to bring those questions. The questions would usually during these conferences, we would have kind of just acknowledgement. I'm going to ask you a few questions here. Everyone's going to have a chance to go through these questions. Hey, something happened, right? Can you explain what happened? How did it make you feel? Was there any harm done? What can we do next time? So those 4 essential questions get asked to all parties. We then action plan, what can we do next time? So just to bring that situation to the table and let the members who were affected by that situation communicate within that community how they made them feel, and potentially how we can move forward, allowing the autonomy of that community to move forward, whether that be that group of individuals or the classroom or whoever that might be, using that framework to really bring to service what was the harm that was caused by this particular situation, and how as a community can we move forward in the best possible light.
And if I can add, and that was great too, but thinking about at the tier 1 level, right, like what we do for all, is that, part of our MTSS system is that we're setting up a school culture and climate where all students feel safe and where all students can learn. So just like every family has their own rules, culture, norms, routines, when anybody comes to our campus, and that includes the adults, we're also coming into a school that has their own culture, rules, norms, routines, so that when we all come into our school, we all agree to follow those expectations. And that's why we spend a lot of time at the beginning of the year and throughout the year teaching everyone what our like on Mojave, we're the pause, practicing respect, accepting responsibility, working together, safety matters. And then we talk to students about what does that look like in every environment in our school. It looks different in the bathroom than in the classroom, than in the cafeteria. We talk about being a community. We talked about being kind and respectful. We create that climate, and that's something that the adults are also expected to follow. That's why even discipline, you don't do based on your belief system, you follow the code of conduct. That is the routine and the culture of the school. We're following the culture of the school. So even if people have different beliefs and different rules and different beliefs outside of school, that's fine. But when we enter the school, we all agree to follow the rules and the culture of our school. So I think it's really important that way everyone is part of that community in our school. You know, at home, you know, kids don't have to raise their hands to go to the restroom, typically, right? But when you come to school, we need to raise our hands so the teacher knows you need to go to the restroom. And we tell them why. We want to make sure you're safe, that we know where you're going, how long you've been gone, to make sure that you're back in the classroom. So we teach them about why the school has different rules and expectations than maybe at home. And all of them are okay. But in order for us to work as a community in school, we agree to follow our expectations. And that's a big part of our MTSS system.
Yeah, and just I think the only thing that I want to try to add, because I think the question said something about parroting something they're hearing at home. So one of the things that I do, and I had a specific situation, one of the earlier ones that I referenced, because some of the things that were being said, I do ask students, I say, hey, you said this to this student, and do you truly feel that way? You're using a word that is derogatory or whatever the case is. And it's rare that a student says, yes, I do. Actually, I know exactly what it means, and that's how I meant to use it. Most times they're like, no, I was just joking or whatever the case is. But I did have an incident where that was said, and I just assumed that, you know, that their guardians or parents don't know. And I call home, and in this instance I did. I said, hey, this is what Johnny, his name's not Johnny, said, and that he feels this way. And I think just about every time, you know, parents are appalled. They're like, I can't believe that was said. That's not how we feel at home. So I don't know where this is coming from. Okay, so that's that part. But the other side of it is, I think for me and our team, it's true that we try to focus on just respect. So, and it's in our, just as you have pause, we have you're it, and the R is for respect. And so I talk to students about, hey, look, you don't have to agree with even me or, you know, one of your peers, but we do have to respect one another. And if you don't have something, a simple rule, if you don't have something nice to say, then just don't say it. And that goes a long way. And I think especially with middle schoolers, they are complex and highly intelligent, but the more simple the direction, I think, the higher likelihood of success. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't give our team a shout out. I know I talked about our assistant principal and dean, our psychologist, counselor, social worker, and all of our staff do a wonderful job, because all these things the things that we're trying to do to be proactive have to happen everywhere at a high standard. And so I'm very grateful for our staff, because they're ultra vigilant, and like I said, we do the best we can, and sometimes there's things that we don't see, but as soon as we are made aware of it, we try to be responsive.
All right, I overruled myself. I actually want to ask one more question, and then we'll do the website tour. And so it's what can be done about bullying or, you know, harassment, meanness happening outside of school, especially online.
I think that same stop, walk, talk type of mechanism applies online as well. If you are in a chat room or you're playing a video game and something is said that you don't like, the first thing to say is, please stop. The next step would be to remove yourself from that particular platform. And that might be difficult to state, hey, we need to maybe get off this platform. Now, if it continues, right, then just like we would make a report that there are things happening, you know, on this platform. Now, here's kind of the level of jurisdiction, so to speak. is during school day, we oversee that area of jurisdiction. After school day, that goes more towards your local police department. And so if there is something that is happening online outside of school day, that would be a report to legal authorities to allow them to own that jurisdiction and move through their processes.
I would like to add, as long as I know we cannot do anything physically in the school because of jurisdiction, but if there are things happening online, like the kids in the group chats, I know 5th grade on their iPads love to get the whole class involved, and there are things that are being said that are being unkind. In the realm of see something, say something, talk to the teacher, let them know. Although we can't discipline or maybe directly talk about that, we can have those conversations of how to use kind words online, to be, a citizen online, and have those classroom lessons with the social worker, the counselor, digital citizenship, to make sure that we can address it kind of as a whole, so they are still getting that message in the school despite us not being able to address it formally.
Yeah, so there are cyberbullying statutes that I agree with Matt that the local police agency could look into. And I mean, you'd much rather have your child go through student discipline process than to get involved in the juvenile court system. And so in some ways, you'd actually rather it be held at the school level. This stuff has gone up to Supreme Courts, and there's presentations on this at conferences for the last 3 years. A case, specifically a cheerleader who had bullied. She was upset that she didn't make the cheer squad and had said the F word. And essentially what the question is to determine whether a school can have jurisdiction over it or not, because even though, it's nice to end it at the school day, there's a lot of activities, whether it's sports or academics that are traveling that are school related, and you can totally discipline, the school can totally discipline in those scenarios. But the test really is whether it's substantially disruptive to the school. And so those are kind of questions for the administration with legal support to determine, do we want to discipline in this situation? Maybe the parents are going to be happy with discipline in that situation. And so it's never going to make it to a, jurisdictional question of the Supreme Court or anything like that. It's just a matter of like where the school's power ends and it has to go to law enforcement. But ultimately, I do think it is incumbent upon us as a district to be aware of cyberbullying, be aware of anything happening on social media, and we'd rather you report it to us and then us determine whether we could discipline or not than to just, call the police right away. I mean, maybe you do call the police in this, but don't bury it. Don't, because you don't think that, the school can handle it. It should still be something that holistically we're trying to work around.
Yeah. So, if I could just add, parents do report those kind of things from outside of school hours. And so what we've tried to do is if it impacts a school day, we try to intervene in some way, shape, or form. That doesn't necessarily mean we do a school consequence for something that happened Sunday morning at 2 a.m., a post or a chat room comment, whatever the case is. So that's first. And then the second thing is, I think this is where the school-home partnership is super important. Sometimes things are brought to us where, I really try to recommend to the parent, hey, maybe there's some measures that you can take at home, some kind of monitoring, because your child seems to be also involved in this kind of behavior that is not good, and is causing this discomfort or harassment or whatever the case is. So I just want to stress that. And just going all the way back to Katie McPherson, one of the things that she told our families is to put on some kind of app on your kids if your kid is going to have a cell phone, so that you're aware of these things before we're in a major deficit and we've dug ourselves into a deep hole. So home school partnership, very important.
All right, just going to take us on a tour here just so you can see the clicks needed to get to some of the resources that we talked about earlier. So always our initial landing spot here is going to just be susd.org, our parent page. At the top here, we can see that we have departments. One of those tabs there, multitude of different departments listed. We are going down to the support services hyperlink here. From there, we scroll through the different resources available. And with that, on the right-hand side, we can see that bowling is one of the services that falls under support services. On the bowling page here, as we come down, we have the board policy. So this is where we can find the policy that all of us follow when going through a formal bowling investigation and the steps taken for all parties. Also here, as we scroll down, we can see the bowling reporting form in both English and Spanish. And this would be the form that we would complete and then turn into the site if we feel that there is indeed a situation that we want to make the campus aware of. Any questions on just some of these resources? Yes.
I just had a question on the two different forms I saw. One is an incident form, and then, I don't know. Oh, okay. So that incident form, like,
It
and
mirrors.
the reporting form.
They mirror. They have all the same information. Both of these, if when turned in, would initiate that process.
Okay. Thank you.
Great question. All right, if there are no further questions on just these resources and how to access them, I would like to share with you just our Stop Walk Talk presentation. So this is some of the prevention materials that we utilize, or if there are situations, we talked about teams looking at disciplinary data to determine a targeted area of need. Oftentimes, if we do see an uptick in a classroom or a grade level, or even an entire school, this would be the resource that we draw upon first to combat a climate that started having some bullying a little bit more than just a one-time situation. So first, we just go through and define for both staff and students are made aware. Oftentimes, these resources also make their way home to parents as well. So we just have a definition as to what bullying is. We talk about, and this is very interactive when we're doing this with students, so we ask students, what do you already know about bullying? And then we bring it back and talk about that in order to be bullying, it's an aggressive behavior. It's not a one-time, but there is that intent to harm. We talk about that it doesn't have to be physical. Sometimes this could be words that are spoken over time that can be defined as bullying. We then go through the stop, walk, talk. Some campuses will even take some of this material, they'll post them up, so it's a reminder to everybody that this is the process that's taken. What does it look like? The whole classroom puts their hand up. We practice together. What do you do if somebody starts to harm you? We put our hand up. We do the universal symbol for stop, and we let them know, hey, it's not okay. That might take many different forms. Hey, I don't like where we're going here. Hey, I don't like when you do that. But you always need to say stop. That makes known that whatever's happening is crossing that threshold. Oftentimes, we get bullying reports from groups of friends. And the friend group might not know that they've crossed that boundary, right? The first thing we need to do is teach our kids, hey, if it's something you don't like, the first thing you need to do is tell that person you need to stop what you're doing. And then we just go, what does it look like if somebody has asked you to stop? And so Yadira made mention of this. This we also train our students. You're going to do things sometimes that kids don't like. It's going to happen. You're going to cross somebody's boundary. If that happens, you take that feedback, take a deep breath, go about your day. And then if the person does not stop, remove yourself from the situation, walk away. If you start to combat, you might be an equal participant in that incident. So if you engage in that conflict, now you're an equal participant in that conflict. The best thing to do is remove yourself from that situation. If you're playing basketball and somebody starts fouling you, you've asked them to stop, they don't stop, find another court, right? Walk away. We also tell if there's anybody who is, Yadira made mention, I learned this whole process from Yadira about, 15 years ago, so want to give credit where credit's due. So if we see that one person walks away, this is where that upstandard philosophy, this is how as a community, the bullying is happening because the bully wants attention. They're receiving the attention in a non-productive, community-harming way. As a community, we train every student. If you see somebody, tell somebody to stop, and they don't stop, and they continue, and they walk away. Everybody in that situation needs to walk away. We need to reduce that effect of gaining attention through that negative behavior. So everybody walks away. Now the bully doesn't have anything to get attention from. And then if it continues, we've stopped, we told them to stop, we've walked away from the situation, it continues, talk to a caring, loving adult on campus. At this point in the presentation, I say, hey, point to a caring, loving adult. They point to aides, they point to teachers, they point to everybody that's in the room that's a caring, loving adult. Let them know. All right, and so we role play this thing out. They fill out a form showcasing what stop, walk, and talk looks like in their own words or pictures or whatever that looks like. We typically post these around campus. Everyone does it. We all have a common language as to what is bullying and what do we do if this starts. We then go to an adult section and let adults know. If somebody comes to you and says, hey, such and such happened, the first thing they do is say, hey, did you tell them to stop? And if they didn't tell them to stop, we coach them and we go back, just like Junior Michael said. Hey, did you let them know that you didn't like that situation? First thing you need to do, you need to assert yourself and let them know, hey, I don't like what you're doing right now. So the first thing adults are told is, hey, maybe coach them, go back with them, have that conversation, have that restorative conversation. What harm was done? Are we going to do this in the future? We hopefully can stop it just with that. Now, if it does happen, we tell the teachers here, we tell all the whole entire campus, you have a duty to respond. If you are going through this situation and you have had a kid that says, hey, I told them to stop, I walked away, I did all the things, you've done that little mini interview with individuals and you feel, yes, this is repetitive. There's an intent to harm here. There's a power imbalance. You have a duty to respond and let the admin know. And from that, the admin takes over and does their investigation. So that's the presentation that we utilize frequently just to kind of combat and be more proactive so that these types of incidents don't occur. Any questions about this presentation? All right, thank you all.
Any other questions? We'll have about 10 or 15 minutes for your guys' questions. No? Really? Okay, if not, I'll switch to the rest of the meeting. Okay, I want to thank our panelists. This was really informative. Thank you all for, where am I? There I am. Yeah, that was great. Okay, so the rest of the meeting, we have a few executive board updates. The first is tomorrow. SPC will be at the expo. If you guys have any questions about wondering what might be a good fit for your kid in middle school or high school or even other elementary schools, or if you know someone who has a younger kid, this is a really good chance to kind of see what the district has to offer. My kids are now in high school, and I know when they were in both elementary and middle school, like I knew that my neighborhood schools were really cool, but I can remember like learning things and you're like, wow, I didn't know that existed, and that would have been a really good fit for my kids. So this is a way to get all of those type of questions and things answered. And if you go to this tomorrow, come say hi, because we'll be there. Also, there are flyers on the table if you want to take one for more information. Okay, other upcoming events on, I hope that date is right. It might be the 4th. It's whatever the first Wednesday is in December, but I keep messing it up because it is the 4th. Okay, great. Don't look at that too. On Wednesday, December 4th, right here at 9 o'clock, we will have a PTO, PTA, APT roundtable. The topics are finance, gifting policies. So we'll see Mr. Buzon again, and then Lisa Martinez from finance will be here. She works very closely with Shannon Crozer, the chief financial officer. And then we also are going to have Lisa Marcarelli from Building Services. We have a new website, right, for facilities reservations. I don't know if any of you have interacted with that yet, but if you have any questions or for how to use that or what the process is for reservations, she can answer all of those questions. Okay, we are not having a general meeting in December. Our next one will be in January. It'll also be a morning meeting because we usually alternate. I know what this topic is, but I haven't confirmed the speaker, so as soon as I have the speaker confirmed, we'll advertise the topic. But our next monthly general meeting will be in January. Okay, budget update. We had a small grant come in that was maybe like under $50, and then our email monthly recurring expense are the only changes from last month. Does anyone have any reps have any announcements? Okay, well, I know it's still November and it's just cooled down, but because this is our last general meeting, unless you're coming to the PTO roundtable on the 4th of December, that I won't see you again until January. So happy early holidays, and thank you all so much.